Onto the global tropical overview for May the 22nd, 2023. As is always the case in these videos, let that expect your mind alone. And for local information, look towards your local weather office and official tropical cyclone warning center. So across the tropics today, we only have one system to talk about, and we'll probably be talking about this system for the next week or more, and that is, of course, Typhoon Mawar, which has intensified into a typhoon since my last video. And you can see on the big picture view, it is a large system, and unfortunately, it is in an environment that is pretty favorable for significant intensification. If we look just at the big picture, you can see first off, the upper level cirrus expanding away from the system on the northern side. This is a very favorable depiction for the storm, and you can also see towards the center of the circulation, you can also see some deep convection wrapping around the inner core structure. Now, the inner core structure is not perfect. There are some imperfections, and that can be seen in this microwave pass here. It's got a pretty good inner core structure built right now, but notice how the eastern and northeastern side is a bit weak. This may be due to some still remaining easterly wind shear that is affecting the storm, but in general, this is expected to weaken over the next few days, the wind shear that is, and due to Mawar's size, even if the wind shear comes up and it's able, if it's able to build this inner core and really sustain itself, it may be able to fend off that shear. As we're not expecting it to get too high, we're not expecting very high shear if it were to rise again. But in general, the conditions ahead are a go, and just looking at oceanic conditions as well, here's a sea surface temperature plot. You can see that right now it's on the border of 29 to 30 degrees Celsius waters, and really for the next 7 days it will likely be in a field of 29 to 30 degrees Celsius waters. Of course, over in this part of its track, it depends heavily on where it tracks, how far north it gets, how far, say, west it's pulled, perhaps by different steering factors, and we're going to go over that in just a moment. But as for the impacts in the Mariana Islands, here's the forecast cone from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. You can see generally the same as last night, showing a typhoon coming right near Guam, though this track is still a bit uncertain. You can see there is still possibilities for the storm to come up towards Saipan and Tinian, and you can also see there's possibilities where the system comes south of Guam. And each of these have its implications for the future as well, and also has implications on who gets what. Now you can see what I typically bring up here with these cones, of these only being track cones, not impact cones, quite well here with the initial wind field. Notice how the wind field is bigger. You translate this to, say, this point here, that's a significant area under tropical storm force winds and potentially typhoon force winds as well, and this wind field will likely grow as well over the next several days as the system comes up towards the Mariana Islands. And also, if the system does come north in Guam, you're not free of impacts. You could still have significant surge come ashore, and you can also have significant winds and significant rainfall. Same case goes for Tinian and Saipan. If this does come just north of Guam, you could still have significant surge, and you can still have significant winds. Here is the earliest reasonable arrivement time of tropical storm force winds alongside the probabilities. You can see the probabilities here are very significant. You can see Saipan and Tinian here under that Tuesday 8 p.m. text, and about that's about 50 to 60% chance of getting tropical storm force winds. And for these islands down here, including Guam, 70 to 80% chance of getting tropical storm force winds. And you can see the arrivement time, the earliest reasonable is Tuesday morning. So really my recommendation sticks that you need to have your preparations done in the Mariana Islands by Monday evening. But if this were to take place, if this were to verify, you might have some time, as this is the earliest reasonable time, you might have some time on Tuesday morning to finish preparations. But I still highly recommend that your preparations are done Monday night. Here's the probabilities of 50 knot or 60 mile per hour winds. These are what the National Weather Service calls severe winds. That's what a severe thunderstorm warning criteria is, at least winds of 58 miles per hour or greater. These winds can start to cause significant disruption and possibly some damage and power outages. You can see very significant odds here, 40 to 50% here in the southern Mariana Island chain. And here's typhoon force winds. These odds are increasing. These odds typically don't get too high until you are right about to get towards the system, as there is, of course, uncertainty where the eye may track, but in general, odds are increasing in the southern Mariana Islands, and I'd say that odds at this point are still fairly high that areas like Guam get at least typhoon force wind gusts. So again, to reiterate, for those in the Mariana Islands, particularly in Guam up towards Tinian and Saipan, I'd have your preparations done by Monday evening. And by Tuesday morning, you can expect some adverse impacts. And of course, stay tuned to your local weather office and the Japan Meteorological Agency for the latest official forecasts. Now, it still remains true that we are not done with Mawar after the Mariana Islands, and this track is still very uncertain. You can just see how much uncertainty there is by day 5. You can see just how wide of a spread there is, and this is hard to pick out as there are a lot of moving parts here. I want to show you this. This is from the JFS ensembles. This is the mean 500 millibar height flow at 7 days from now. So this is May 28th. Notice how many features we have on this map. We've got this subtropical ridge here over South Korea. North of there, we've got this trough above the ridge, and this is trying to degrade this eastern side of the ridge. And that could potentially cause, if the system's far enough east, it could cause the system to perhaps try and recurve. Alternatively, if the system is maybe a bit more west, it may still be caught underneath the subtropical ridge. There's also another system that you can't really see here. There's a potential South China Sea storm that the GFS has been trying to develop, which, if it does form, it could potentially tug this system towards the west, even further, keeping it underneath the subtropical ridge. This is a very, very sensitive forecast, and here's the European as well. You can see in general, the pattern is the same, but there are subtle differences. This trough is a little bit more east, and this ridge is perhaps a little bit more stronger. This trough in this position would likely break down this part of the ridge here, break apart these two ridges, but even in that case, you have this ridge still here, and this would likely carry the storm towards the west. Alongside that, there's uncertainty on how much latitude this storm gains. If this system comes south of Guam, you could absolutely see this storm being a threat to the Philippines. If the system comes towards the north, that may pose more of a threat to Japan. There's a ton of uncertainty here and a lot of moving parts, and this is very sensitive. This is a lot going on and a lot for the models to handle. So really the key messages here for those in Japan and South Korea, in China and Taiwan and the Philippines, just keep monitoring Mawar. And of course, stay tuned to local weather offices. They're going to have the latest information on this even more frequently than a lot of people like me can produce online. And of course, they're going to have the best preparedness information ahead of the storm. And don't look at models. I'll show you this here. This is a GFS. You may see this online. You may see models like this on Twitter or on Facebook, and you'll see, oh, the GFS, this model takes it out to sea, I'm good. There's been a lot of turning with the GFS on this. Yesterday, you saw it in my video, the GFS had a storm stalling here near Taiwan, which eventually went to China. You can see now it's on a solution out to sea, but this will likely flip around. And it's not only the GFS doing it. This was also the European, the Canadian, all global models are doing this sort of flipping. And this is to be expected with such a sensitive pattern and being, in this case, over 7 days out. Now, we have seemed to got a little more confidence in the system coming further west. Here's the GFS tracks, or sorry, this is the Canadian tracks of the Canadian ensembles. I always confuse Canadian and GEPS. But you can see in general, we are seeing more tracks coming westwards, which this does make sense. We are starting to get a consensus that the system may come more towards Guam, and having this launching point can allow us to get a general better idea on where the system may track. But of course, that's not set in stone. The forecast cone, as I showed you, has still possible tracks north and south of Guam. You can just see a storm that goes towards Tinian and Saipan may be more inclined to recurve rather than a system that goes towards Guam. So there's still a lot of uncertainty. Here's the GFS tracks. And you can see more certainty here on a westward track. Remember yesterday we had some ensembles still up east of this entire spread, perhaps coming towards the northern Mariana Islands. Now, we're not expecting that anymore. We're expecting this bend towards the west as the big, large-scale trough over Japan lifts out and the subtropical ridge takes hold. And of course, as I keep reiterating, there's just so much uncertainty here. Look at how wide the spread is here. By 7 days, you could have a system as far south on this plot as the Central Philippines and as far north as northern Taiwan and the southern Japanese islands. Ton of uncertainty, and that's really what I'm going to reiterate in every video that I do here, as long as we are still pretty far out from this scenario. So again, for those in Japan, Taiwan, China, South Korea, and the Philippines watching the system and worrying, don't worry. You don't have to worry too much right now. It's just something to monitor. And it is May, and we're going into June now, so this is something that is more common, although this system does feel like something you're tracking in August and September. But in general, that's the key messages there, and I'll leave the cone graphic as I close this video out. But that is all for now. I will have another video out probably tomorrow, and this will be a local time, and I will break down more impacts on what is coming for the Mariana Islands and what is going to happen in the future. So thanks for watching. That's all for now.